They got it. Oh, God. Hey Dave, do we need all that stuff on the top? I don't think they're seeing it. But. I wonder if I can hide that bar somehow. That's okay. What I just saw it. Hide floating meeting controls. How about that? I wonder if I can hide this too. Yeah. Wasn't hiding the other one. Yeah, I don't think they can see it online. Move it up in the corner. Bad thing, no, I was talking. It's the internet, man. All right, hey, you're good. Here we go. Thanks, everybody, for coming down tonight. Tonight is the first night I've done this program. I was still working at it at 5:30 tonight, so we're all going to be surprised at what comes up on the screen, and then you'll be surprised at what comes out of my mouth. This is my third book, and who knew? It took me 3 years to put this book together. And basically it's the same heronry that I discovered one day. And I had such a good time the first year. I went back for the second year. And then the third year I went back. And then I thought, well, hey, here's my book. So hey, Dave. Hey, Dave. Hey. Well, yeah. Either that or we can not go. How big are these files? Here you go. Oh, very interesting. So do you have another picture you can go with? Lovely cover. Yeah. For $30, you can have the cover and everything that goes behind it. Oh, there we go. Is that number 2? That's number 2. I tapped it. Oh, okay. Okay. When I was a kid, a few years ago, my father used to take us fishing in the evenings, and we'd always end up seeing great blue herons, and I always kind of thought they were really cool birds. But before the blue herons, we're going to talk about the beavers, because the beavers are where it all started. The beavers have been in North America for 7 million years. And the Europeans first settled in New England, up in Maine. 1930s, the restoration program was begun because the beavers and their pelts were used for a form of money. And so in 1930, they decided they'd try and restore the beavers into Massachusetts. And so they got a couple of beavers from, I think they got them from New York. They let them go in Western Massachusetts. And by 1947, there were 46 colonies of beavers. Jump ahead to 1996, Massachusetts passed a law prohibiting trapping of fur-bearing animals with leg hold traps and body gripping traps. And that gave the beavers a better start on life. So by 2002, they had passed some 26 laws and regulations protecting the beavers in the state. So as you can imagine, there were a lot of beaver ponds popping up. Beavers they do not hibernate. Their ears and eyes, their nose and ears have flaps that protect the water from going down their ears and up their nose when they dive, and they have lenses that cover their eyes so they can see just as good underground as they can underwater as they can on the top. Their tail, they keep fat in their tail. So if the winters are hard, they can live on the fat in their tail. This is the operating position of a beaver. Their teeth grow all the time. So they have to keep chewing. And if they get sick or they have problems with their teeth, the teeth are still going to grow. And I've read accounts of beavers that have been found starved to death because they haven't been able to eat because something has happened to their teeth. So in the late 1800s, egrets and herons were targeted for use in ladies' hats. Hunters were paid 32 cents an ounce for bird feathers. And it took the death of 4 great blue herons to produce an ounce. So as you can imagine, the egrets and herons, their days were numbered. 20 million birds of the egrets and heron species lost their lives to the fashion industry. In 1913, Congress enacted the Weeks-McLean Act, and that protected the birds. And at that time, the Mass Audubon Society was also formed. In 1925, a colony of great blue herons was found in Harvard Forestry. And they had a large hurricane come through and did a number on them. But they bounced back in 1984. Wayne Peterson and the Mass Audubon Society, they counted 229 nests in 29 colonies across the state. I think there's probably more of them now because I've seen more heronries, and I've seen quite a few herons around here, as you probably have noticed. This is the first heronry that I visited. And Billy Byrne, who was a photographer of the Division of Fish and Wildlife, he was a good friend of mine. And he told me about this heronry one day, and he gave me directions. I don't think it's still there. It was up by Queen Lake in Phillipston. And it took me a while to get in there and to find it. And the reason I found it was the horrendous racket that was going on, because it was feeding time for all of these nests. And the birds, when I get in there, it was like being in the Amazon jungle. The bugs were terrible. And the large birds were coming back and forth and back and forth. I spent a couple hours in there, and it was so miserable, I never went back. But this is a slide that I took, and I scanned it and did a little bit of work on it to bring it to life. We're going to look at the heron, a little bit of how the heron functions, their biological operations of the body. And the first thing is the eyes. If you've ever tried to sneak up on a heron, you probably can't do it because they have what they call monocular vision, where one eye can look one way and the other eye can look the other way. So they can see what's coming. And if a fish comes by them, their eyes will zero right in on a fish. This is a juvenile heron. These pictures like this, I should tell you this. I never got within 125 to 150 yards of these herons because I don't believe in disturbing animals. And when I found this rookery, I found a place where I could probably set up, and I was back out of the way, so I wasn't going to bother the everyday workings of the herons. So I have a 600 millimeter lens that is pretty good. And then like this picture, I took this photograph and I put it in the computer and I cropped it a little bit, and that kind of blew it up. So when you see pictures like this, it's not that I snuck right up on the bird and got right up in the face. Their legs, you probably didn't know this. I didn't until I read it. This is their foot. Their foot goes all the way up to here. This is their ankles. This is their lower leg, and the upper leg goes up under the feathers, and it works backwards the way we walk. You ever watch a heron walk, and the way it goes, the feet goes forward, not like ours. They have a 7-foot wingspan, and they're the largest heron on the North American continent, but they only weigh 4 to 5 pounds. And this behavior, I see this in young birds in the nest, and they flop their wings out like that when it's cold to get the sun in. And I also believe they do it to cool off when the winds are blowing. It's not something that you see all the time, but if you spend a lot of time watching herons, you'll see them do this. And you can tell they're hot because they kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, the bottom of their throat kind of quivers in and out, like they're breathing heavy or something. Their neck is designed, it's got a special vertebrae in it, and you don't usually see it. And I was up in Orange the other day at the Mass Wildlife area up in North Orange, and this guy was fishing right on the side of the road, and I kept watching it, and I noticed that it was kind of, every now and then it would hit, the neck would hit in a certain position, and that vertebrae would pop right out. So I kept watching them, and finally I got that picture. But it's something you don't really see. And this is a young bird too. And I don't know how long it's going to hang around here, but it wasn't having any luck catching any fish. Preening. All kinds of herons spend hours and hours and hours of preening. I've seen great blue herons fishing, intently fishing, and then all of a sudden they think, well, I got to preen. So they stop and they do this right in the middle of the hunt. And fishing is not pretty for great blue herons. They also go after snakes, frogs, tadpoles. They will even take small birds, small water birds. And they also, sometimes in migration, they'll land in fields and they'll walk around looking for mice. And with a camera that takes 21 frames a second, you can get pictures like this. And this. And this. They're a lot of fun to watch, and I'll tell you where you can have fun watching them. If you got to have patience. So, down at the Power Canal in Turnus Falls, right now there's probably some still there, but they fish right off the edge of the road, and you can walk on that road. It's about a mile long. And I just go up there with my camera and set it on the tripod, and I just wait until things like this happen. But they can pound down a lot of fish. Sometimes you have salad with your sushi. What I like is watching them try and get the fish untangled from the stuff that they come up with. They come up with all kinds of stuff with the fish in the middle. Sometimes they come up like this with no fish and just a pile of weeds. This is a carp. I saw this heron pop this thing up. This was also down at the Power Canal. And it was so big that the bird, he speared it right through with the bill. You can see the end of the, right there, the tip of the bill. And what they do is they open their beak a little bit to keep the pressure on the fish. And sometimes if I'm in a pond, or if you see a heron with a big, like a horn pout, what they do is they'll pick it up and they'll fly to some hard ground, and they'll throw the fish down and they'll spear it. And then they'll pick it up and they'll shake it, and then they'll throw it on the ground again, and then they'll watch it, and then they'll spear it again. And what they do is it's trying to break all the bones. So every heron I've seen swallow a pout goes down head first, and they have to break those fins on the side of the heads, because if those fins aren't broken, then they're going to be in trouble. And this is the danger sign. This is my fishing hole. Stay away. They're pretty territorial, these birds. I've never seen one attack another one physically, but they certainly make a racket, and they certainly chase each other around. Like so. The herons, the Great Blue Herons, are back in the middle of March, and they don't waste any time working on the nests. The herons will mate for life, and the males do all of the collecting of the sticks. They use the same nest that they used last year, and if a winter storm comes through and it knocks the nest down, they will build another nest. March 26th was when I took this picture, and it was so incredibly snowing by the time the male kept coming back and forth, and it got so that I couldn't even see the nest. So I packed up and left. And when they come back, they're in their breeding plumage, and you can see why they would want to have these birds and use them for the hat industries. This is just the morning sun coming up. This isn't, I haven't photoshopped any of these pictures. I don't have Photoshop, and I like to make the pictures look what they look like when I took them. And I discovered early on that the sun comes through the trees and it backlights these birds, and you can get some pretty fabulous heron pictures, as you'll see. But the males, they get right to town. They'll rip sticks out of the trees. They'll pull sticks up off of beaver dams. I've even seen them take sticks from other birds' nests. And they'll fly in, and the female usually will take the nest, take the stick, and she's the one that puts it where she thinks it should be. And they're like, I mean, that stick is going to be 7 feet long. And they will keep bringing sticks until the end of the nesting season. And when the birds leave, even when they're feeding the young birds, every now and then, one will crack me up because it'll come in with a stick and try and feed it to the birds, the chicks. But these are just a few shots of the birds coming in, doing the nest building. And I followed this male. He took that stick off of a beaver lodge. And I saw him coming. So I put the camera on him, and the light was perfect when he landed. You can see her. They get so happy to see each other. Almost as happy as the chicks do when the adults come flying in with dinner. Even when the incubation starts, they still bring stuff in, and it's always funny to watch because the female will get settled down on the eggs or trying to lay eggs. The male will come in with a stick, and she'll stand up and she'll grab the thing and she'll stick it in the nest and she'll lay down, and the male will turn around and take off. She gets settled in, and within 2 and 3 minutes, he's right back with another stick, and she stands up, and it goes on and on and on and on. Really, really funny to watch. And this is pilfering from thy neighbor. There's a bird up there in the nest. And this was the female, and she was trying to keep busy while the male was out. So she decided that, hey, I'll just rob from the basement. They won't miss it. And it takes a heron a couple of years to sexually mature. And there are always these herons that I don't know if they're from the same heronry or if they are birds that are just wandering, but it's a real busy time in the spring. And there's all kinds of commotion going on, and you can see these guys just loafing around, just like teenagers, you know. And I've seen some pretty good dog fights. And it takes herons about between 26 and 28 days to hatch. And they're staggered. They're laid. One will lay a first egg, say on Wednesday, and then there'll be another egg laid on Thursday, and then maybe the third egg on a Friday. And sometimes, not a lot of times, I've only seen it a few times, they'll have 4 chicks. So, and what happens is the first bird gets fed 4 days before the last bird to hatch. So that bird is bigger. And a lot of times the little bird loses. And that's what happened to one of the nests this past summer. They were having 4, and I could tell the way the little chick, the smallest one, was having trouble getting food. And I went in one day and there was only 3 birds in the nest. So, and when the eggs are hatched, there's a nest change. I don't know how many times a day they do it. I never sat there from sunrise to sunset, but that might be in my future. But you got to be ready for it. And I don't know how many times I would set the camera up on a nest, and I would wait and watch and wait and watch and wait and watch, and I'd see a heron come in, and they always, some of them make a croak noise. And it amazes me, like with puffins or any of these big colonial nesters, the females know the croak from, to me, they all sound the same, but the females know them. And sometimes the herons don't even make a noise, and the females know they're coming. So they stand up and they kind of bounce up and down, and the other adult will come in and they've got this little dance that they do, and then the male will take off and he's gone. Or the female, you can't tell them apart because they both are identical looking. But it only takes about 30 seconds, and this is done. When the chicks get a little older, sometimes they'll hang around a little bit. But if the bird has been sitting all night long, and she's hungry, off she goes. And you can see the little chicks right there in the nest. Looks like there's two there. There might be another egg in there. There might be two more eggs. But here, give this to the chicks. The chicks grow like weeds. The adults, when the adults fly in, they fill their crop. They spend a couple hours, frogs, fish, and everything, and they'll land in the nest and they'll regurgitate it. And the chicks fight over it. As the chicks get older, sometimes the chicks will just grab a hold of the beak and it'll go right into their mouths. And then off they go, and they just make trip after trip after trip. And they're getting bigger and bigger. More sticks for the chicks. Hey, Dad, what do you think we are, beavers? When the adults do come flying in, it's pretty spectacular to see. And this particular bird fed the adults, and when they get almost as big as the chicks, I mean, the chicks get almost as big as the adults. Sometimes I wonder how come there aren't a lot of blind herons in the world, because those beaks they grab at the adult's face, and they'll pull her down by the neck, and it's brutal to watch. And then they'll hop out like this, and they'll shake, and this dust and everything will come flying off them, and they might preen a little bit, and then off they go. While these guys want more. What can I say? I saw it. I had to take a picture of it. Actually, I see that quite often. Now here's an adult right here, and see there, this bird is ready to grab a hold of the beak, and they just rip the neck right down into the basin, and the nests get smaller and smaller sometimes. I've seen birds almost fall off. The feeding frenzy is incredible, and the noise that they make is incredible. I'm going to say they're probably 8 weeks old. Now here's a nest with 4 chicks. All 4 of these chicks made it 2 years ago. And you can see it coming in, and she's like, oh boy. Do I really want to jump down in that and puke in the nest? But as they get older and older, they start leaving the nest, and they'll hop out, and they'll sit out like this, and it's just day after day. And every time I go in, they're further out or they're further up, and then when the winds come, it picks them up, and then they'll start flapping their wings, and they'll lift right up out of the nest. And this is one that I saw. This was this year, and I just a lot of wildlife photography and being in the right place at the right time. And I had my lens on this bird, and I thought its nest was up here, and I thought it was going to jump up because it had been sitting there for an hour. So it did. It took a jump up. It was tried to get up on this branch, and it didn't quite make it. And it was kind of hanging. But finally, it made it back to the nest. I wished I could hear the conversation between these two birds, you know. And like I said, they stopped bouncing up and down, and then finally they leave the nest. Way to go. And they'll come back to the nest. They don't go very far. They'll go down in the swamp, and they won't get fed if they're not back up in the nest, and they can't feed for themselves right off the bat. They start spearing at stuff in the nest when they're young. I'm amazed. Even 2 and 3 weeks old chicks, they're spearing at things. And eventually, when they do leave, they'll end up down in the swamp. And this is what happens when you feed your chicks wood for all of its life, and they get down in the mess. They think they're supposed to eat wood. But these two birds, you can see they're right out of the nest. And I just happened to be there when they were both, I don't know if they were from the same nest. 3 years ago, the heronry had 7 nests in it. 2 years ago, there was 9 nests in it. And then this past summer, there were 11 nests, and one of them failed, and I don't know why. It was quite a ways away from the other 10. And the only reason I know it failed because I saw a heron leave its nest, and I thought it was going to go down to the shore and get some twigs and stuff for the nest. And it went right into this other bird's nest and picked up this big stick right out of the nest and flew right back with it. So I kept watching this bird, and this bird kept going back and forth. And I never saw birds in that nest again. So I don't think the heron drove it out, but I think he was just taking advantage of it. And then I was down in the Quabbin one day. I was out along the shore, and I was waiting for deer, coyotes, anything that might decide to run by my lens. And I heard this heron making a heck of a racket. So I turned around and looked up the shore, and this heron was following this coyote. And every now and then the coyote would stop and turn around and look at it. And finally, the heron gave up, and the coyote just kept right on trotting. And then I was watching this heron feed one day, and this beaver was swimming by, and it got a little ways down the shore, and it turned around, and it thought, are you the guy that was taking sticks off my bed? So he turned around, and he came back, and he got right behind the heron, and he let go with a big tail slap right behind the heron. I thought the heron was going to jump out of his feathers, but it just stood there, and the beaver popped up and continued going back this way. But one thing that I noticed about this picture when I got it up on the screen is, like I do a lot of times, I take pictures, and it happens so fast. I really don't know what I have until I get it home and I look at it on the screen, where I can take time and blow it up. And the thing that I was amazed at is, look at how high this water goes from that tail slap. I mean, that's got to be 12 feet up there. And I've got pictures of beavers doing that, that I've taken with 21 frames a second, and they drive their tail right down into the water with all of their might. Some of the other birds that we can find in the beaver ponds because of the beavers. This is a little green heron. This is a little green heron. These herons do not nest in colonies like the great blue herons do. They'll nest in reeds, or sometimes they'll nest up in a tree there close to the ground. And sometimes they'll nest one or two right close together, but they're not big colonial nesters. And this bird, I think, must have just popped out of the nest when I happened along. But the green heron, the adult don't come feed it. Because remember what I said, herons have to fend for themselves. And evidently he thought I was hungry. But I turned it down. I really don't like fish. Did anyone go up and see the little blue heron up in Northfield last spring that was up there? I think Dave told me about it. Somebody told me about it. And I went up, and within 15 minutes there it was. But along the coast and down south, these herons use beaver ponds to nest in, I'm sure. It's a cousin of the heron. This is a great egret. A lot of people see these birds and say, hey, Dale, I saw an albino great blue heron in the Connecticut River, the Millis River or Lake Ellis or whatever, but they're not. And they're mainly strictly fish eaters. You can see the difference between their cousins. You can see the difference in size and shape between the two of them. And I was up in the Connecticut River in the Power Canal one day a couple of years ago, and it was really foggy. And there was 11 of these guys up there this particular fall. And the fog was dissipating, and then it would come in, and then it would dissipate again. And it was nice to get some pretty good pictures up there. I had a lot of fun up there that day. And when I see days like this, I just take advantage of it, because you might never see it again. It might never happen again. This is a Virginia rail. They're easy to see, well, fairly easy to see, but what you don't usually see is a Virginia rail chick. There were two of them with this bird. They're jet black, and you can see the birds here, right there. Like little pieces of coal. And I don't know what in the heck was going on. I watched this for 10 minutes. This is a pair of female wood ducks. And this bird on the right just kept working and working and working on this other duck. And finally, off they went. Any experts want to guess as to what was going on there? Because they were telling secrets. And I was up here again. I was up at the Mass Wildlife area. This great horned owl was sitting in the tree on the shore, and I kept watching it. And it was early in the morning. It was fairly dark, and I looked in the viewfinder, and it was gone. And I thought, oh no, it's gone. And then there was this big splash right in front of me, and I looked, and it was sitting in front of me, and it was sitting on a Norway rat. It had seen this Norway rat from way down on the shoreline. I'm sure of it, because I certainly didn't throw it for him. But so he sat on it for a little while, or she sat on it for a little while, and then she flew up to the tree, a tree behind it. And she hadn't been there 2 minutes and she had company. This female peregrine falcon just kept buzzing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so finally it gave up and it landed, it went around and it landed way in one of these dead trees in the back, and it just sat there and it watched. And about 10 minutes later, and the owl kept looking around. And finally, the owl decided it was time to leave. So it took off for the shore. And within 3 seconds, this peregrine falcon was right on its tail and chased the owl right into the woods. But it pulled up before the woods. It didn't go into the woods, and the owl did with the rat. Osprey, everybody knows what ospreys are, and I see them in quite a few beaver ponds. Otters, I never know when I'm going to see an otter. They just pop up at will. Like when I was taking a picture of this heron, this otter showed up. Bobcats, I see a lot of bobcats around beaver ponds. And this was hunting along a beaver dam. And this was in New Salem. There's a big, large beaver pond in New Salem, and there's a big field right next to it. And the grass is about as high as a coyote's ears. And I was standing there one day, I was hoping to see a moose. And I saw the grass moving, and I thought, well, what the heck is that? And then all of a sudden this coyote started hunting stuff and it was coming right towards me. So I put the camera right where I thought it was going to come up, and I was pretty close, and it spotted me and it stopped. And I caught it and I focused on it. I took 2 pictures and off it went. And that's the best of the 2. See a lot of these, see them at beaver ponds, but you see them in bird feeders, and you see them walking the road, and you see them. So it's not a novelty to see a bear anymore. And deer, they like coming out in the early morning and at dusk to feed along the edge of beaver ponds. And the moose population, I think, is down a little bit. These were in northern Quabbin. And this female moose was being driven nuts by deer flies. See them all? It was this moose. I watched this moose swim all the way across this pond, and everywhere it came, the deer flies were on it, and it got right in front of me, and I thought I was going to see a moose totally submerge. The eyes and the nostrils in the nose. The ears are underwater. That whole moose was totally underwater. And this cool dude knows how to do it. See the ear? He's got a ripped ear. I took this picture in June. I took this picture in the end of November. See the ear? Same guy. Well, here again, not close. That's 600 millimeter lens. That moose was kind of curious to me, of me, and he kind of got close to me, and then it was closer than I wanted, so I got out of there. But before, I want to give you people something to ponder. So, who is the genius of the swamp? This or this? Any questions?